This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, live Hour 3 in Los Angeles, iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and FS1. Christine Leahy is joining me for Hour 3 today. Greg Cosell in about 5 minutes to break down a couple of things in the Super Bowl. Let's take a look back, kind of our final bow on the Super Bowl. By the way, today is National Letter of Intent Day, meaning it's when all the major colleges finalize their recruiting classes. Georgia, I follow recruiting, I always have. Kirby Smart and Georgia, to me, have the best class. Alabama dropped to 8th. That's the lowest Nick Saban class in a decade. Georgia has a negative effect on Alabama. So congratulations. Georgia's here to stay. They got to the national championship game, came within a play of winning, and they are now stealing recruits from Alabama. Also, tip of the cap to Ohio State and Penn State. Penn State, post Joe Paterno, has done an unbelievable job to rebuild that program. So National Letter of Intent Day. Speaking of that, I'll start in New England. The NFL yesterday. Bob Kraft flipped Josh McDaniel. He had verbally committed, like all those high schoolers, to Indianapolis. And Bob Kraft came in. And you know what he sold him? Their owner's crazy. I'm not. Their quarterback, Andrew Luck, has a bad shoulder. Ours is the greatest of all time. Their organization, outside of Peyton Manning, chaos. Ours, stability. They don't know how good they'll be next year. Us, we'll be back in the AFC Championship at minimum. They flipped him. Colin, Josh McDaniels is a jerk. Now, we think this is sinister, and we think it's evil. But he's 41 years old, got a couple of daughters, wife. Maybe just got cold feet. Maybe we're jumping to conclusions. Maybe like a lot of people in America, he gets recruited, says, I want to go someplace. And then his boss comes back in and sweetens the pot and says, I'll give you a little less this, a little more of that. I'll give you a better office. I'll give you more responsibility. I'll give you a little this. Colin, this guy's still a jerk. Indianapolis, you had a real nice guy, Chuck Pagano. How did that work? All the great coaches, as I've been saying for 15 years on radio, the great ones all have some jerk in them. Belichick's got some jerk. Sean Payton's got some jerk. Nick Saban's got some jerk. Harbaugh's got some jerk. Nice guys, at least in coaching. Chuck Pagano, Wade Phillips. They get run over. But here's Chris Ballard, held a press conference today. Not in the best mood ever.
We were disappointed. Unquestionably, we were disappointed and surprised. We had agreed to contract terms. We had an agreement in place. We followed all the rules, did everything right. Very confident Monday evening and Tuesday morning. I got a call Tuesday evening saying he had changed his mind and was going in a different direction. And at that point, I informed our owner. We informed y'all of where we were going, and we'll keep moving forward. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
The rivalry is back on.
I know Chris Ballard. I trust him. I think he's really smart, and I like what he's doing. And I'm bummed out. I shouldn't be, right? I'm a Patriot guy. No, I'm bummed out because it was going to work, and it was going to be awesome. And it was going to be like all those partnerships in the NFL that I love watching. Young quarterback talent, Jimmy Garoppolo, and smart, young, intellectual football coach, Kyle Shanahan. Goff, McVay, Trubisky, Matt Nagy, Bill O'Brien, Deshaun Watson, Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz. I love football, and more than anything, I love the quarterback position, and I have since I was a kid. And what I'm seeing in the NFL right now is awesome. I mean, how much fun was it to watch even Philadelphia's backup, Nick Foles, in the Super Bowl? Trick plays, go for it now, fourth down, out-of-the-box thinking, all sorts of sets. Name a top quarterback talent and a young, bright offensive mind that's not working right now. You know what Josh McDaniels is to some degree, and everybody's emotional today? He's Lane Kiffin. Think about it for a second. Young, cocky coordinators, given an early head coaching job, USC and the Broncos both failed. Then they rebound and they go to a top coordinator job where they both win titles. Kiffin at Alabama wins a couple, and McDaniels in New England wins a couple. And they eventually, at some point in their career, have backed out of a job too early. Kiffin bolted Tennessee, McDaniels bolts Indianapolis. Let's take the emotion out of it because it's clouding the truth. Lane Kiffin and Josh McDaniels had the support of Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, the two best football coaches in the world. And they did because they're good. They're good. This hurts. The rivalry's back on. Chris Ballard's bum and should be. This was going to work. And football is better when great young quarterback talents like Deshaun Watson and Goff and Wentz, some would say Nick Foles and Garoppolo and Trubisky, when they get a really smart, young, clever offensive guy. Let me just for 1 second support Josh Daniels. Is it possible Andrew Luck's shoulder is worse than the Colts are telling us? I mean, let's be honest here. This thing's been shrouded in mystery. It's been enigmatic for a year. Just think for a second. You're Josh McDaniels. The one place I'll sign with him. We don't really know, and I'm not sure the Colts do, what's up with that guy you see on the screen, Andrew Luck. Jim Irsay doesn't do Chris Ballard any favors. Either does that shoulder and the mystery that surrounds it. With that, for the final time until the Combine, my guy, 37 years NFL Films, Greg Cosell is joining us. All right, story of the day is Josh McDaniels in New England. All right, as a play caller, Greg, what makes him unique?
Well, I think you have to look back at his career, Colin, and realize that he's had to make a lot of adjustments based on personnel and has consistently done so. Keep in mind, he was the offensive coordinator when they got Randy Moss, and they added a vertical passing game to that because prior to that they had receivers who couldn't do that. Then he was back, and they ran a lot of these sort of option routes, the choice routes, all the short and intermediate stuff that came to sort of define Tom Brady and the Patriots. Then this year they get Brandon Cooks, and the pass game became a little more vertical once again. So he has shown the ability really well to adapt to the talent that he's playing with, particularly at the receiver position.
So Brady throws for 505 yards against Philadelphia, despite the Eagles having Malcolm Jenkins, good corners, Fletcher Cox, a rotating group of really good defensive linemen. What didn't Philadelphia do right? Because in that second half, Greg, I mean, they were throwing the man. I saw some zone.
Yep.
I mean, what did you make of Brady? Did it surprise you?
Well, I had talked a bit about a couple of things I thought they do. Selective use of no-huddle tempo. They started with that right on the first series. The other thing I thought they do was a lot of quick game. They didn't do a ton of that, but instead of that, Colin, they did play action. And they threw 16 play action passes, 11 of them on first down, which is the best time to do play action. And Brady was 11 for 16 for 225 yards on play action. So instead of the quick game, they used a lot of play action, and that caused significant problems for a very aggressive Eagles defense. So those were the two things I think that they did that really caused problems. And other than a few selected snaps here and there, you could make the argument that the Patriots O-line did a very, very good job. Now, they were helped by the things we just spoke about, but I think that they did a really good job throughout the game.
Listen, Malcolm Butler's story's getting a ton of press, and Malcolm Butler may have, Jordan Richards played instead, and Malcolm Butler could have helped with Zach Ertz, for instance. I mean, did you feel his absence was a deal breaker or had any impact?
Huge impact for many reasons, because number one, their slot corner was Patrick Chung. He lined up as their slot corner throughout the game. And number two, just as you said, Jordan Richards played in their dime. They love to play with 6 defensive backs. That's a staple of their sub-packages. And Jordan Richards would not have been on the field. And he got beat a number of times on critical third down plays, including the Corey Clement 55-yarder right before the end of the first half.
Yeah. Let's segue. Nick Foles, we thought Minnesota was a little bit of an outlier. I thought he looked very loose very early. I thought he threw the ball moving very well, which not everybody does. Do we need to recalibrate our thoughts on Nick Foles?
Well, he had a throw early. I think it was the first third down where he moved to his left and hit Jeffrey. But for the most part, Colin, this was a pocket game. I mean, there are a couple of throws where he moved within the pocket, but for the most part, these were throws from the pocket. And he threw the ball exceptionally well with probably the most overlooked trait for quarterbacks that I know you probably talk about it because you're a quarterback guy, but you don't hear it often these days, and that's precise ball location. And his throw to Jeffrey for the touchdown, his throw to Corey Clement for the touchdown,
Perfect.
Those were big-time throws as far as precise ball placement.
I thought the play of the game, and Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth noted it was a big play, but to me it was the game. It was the 4th and 1 with about 5.5 minutes to go in their own territory. Now, if they don't make that, the Eagles' defense looked at least slightly gassed in the previous 2 drives for New England, and Tom was picking apart their zone. He was picking apart their man coverage. So it was a very clever play. New England did get some rare pressure on Foles.
That's true.
Can you give me, what is this play called?
Well, it's what's called a mesh concept. They've been running it. A lot of teams run it. It's with 2 shallow crossers that intersect, and you run it when you anticipate man-to-man defense, which you are going to get on 4th and 1, and you end up with one of the defenders basically having to work through traffic because the 2 crossers intersect, and that's exactly what happened. I think it was McCourty. I don't know, but McCourty basically ran right into Selleck, who was running the other crosser. But that's part of the Eagles' pass game concept. They must have run that concept 6 or 7 times, maybe more, throughout the course of the game, and it actually pairs with 2 other concepts that are part of it, but they run that. It's called a mesh concept.
When you look at New England's front 7, they did not, outside of that play, get a ton of pressure. A rebuild is perhaps overstating it, but if you ran the Patriots, if you were the film guy and the personnel guy for the Patriots, and you watched that entire game and you watched Nick Foles, they ran, they threw short, they threw deep, is there a rebuild in New England's future, or are there just tweaks needed because they only forced 1 punt in that game?
Well, they're a team that relies essentially on concepts and scheme to pressure the quarterback, and I think you know that. Keep this in mind. James Harrison was a major part of the Patriots' defense. He played in all personnel packages, Colin. He played over 90% of the defensive snaps. Think about that. Whereas Dietrich Wise, their rookie, who had seemingly been a part of particularly their sub-packages, he only played 7 or 8 snaps. So I think that tells you where they stand with what they need as far as pass rush. You can scheme. You can do a really nice job. They did that through the playoffs with some really nice concepts, but at some point you need someone who can rush the quarterback and win one-on-one.
And finally, your one big play. There weren't many defensive gems, Greg, but I've told you have one.
Well, I just want to give a very quick history here. There were, I think, 8 or 9 times in this game where Brandon Graham came inside at defensive tackle. That's what the Eagles do on 3rd down, and he plays next to Cox. Okay, and about 3 of the times he did that, he really gave Shaq Mason problems. You didn't notice it necessarily because he didn't sack Brady, but he gave Shaq Mason problems. So let's start this play just so people see it again. Obviously, it was a huge, huge play and arguably gave the Eagles the victory. But you can see what they did here is there's Cox and Graham. They're both inside a tackle. Now, this is a 5-man protection concept. No back, no tight end. So that means the center, David Andrews, he's going to slide one way or the other. This time he slides to Cox, who most people view as the better pure player, the better pass rusher. So when he does that, what do you get, Colin? You get one-on-one with Shaq Mason versus Brandon Graham. That's exactly what the Eagles wanted. They want the one-on-one matchup. They're going to get it either with Cox or with Graham in this situation. And you see what happens here is Graham wins. You get a defensive end on an offensive guard. That's the matchup you want. That's the matchup they got at a critical time in the game. And this time he was able to get there. He just missed getting there 3 or 4 times earlier in the game. So the Eagles, obviously, this is part of their repertoire, part of what they do. and it turned out to be arguably the game-winning play, the one big defensive play in the game.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any question. The way Tom had a 2-minute warning, he had a timeout, and they had been humming. To me, this is the Super Bowl. That play right there. Greg Cosell, 57 years NFL films. We will talk again at the Combine. Thank you so much, Greg.
All right, Con, really appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. Hey, Valentine's is 1 week away. I've memorized it, and I'm quite proud of myself. It is next Wednesday, and you got to be there for your lady friend. You got to deliver.
The flowers?
I want to upgrade this year to Sherry's Berries.
Oh, to Sherry's Berries.
Listen, flowers are wonderful.
You can't eat them, though.
That's right. You can eat a juicy strawberry. Do you like milk or dark chocolate? I'm a dark chocolate person.
Dark chocolate more. But I like white chocolate also.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Well, Sherry's Berries, we've had them around the office. Dark chocolate, milk chocolate, white chocolate with juicy strawberries. They'll give you 20% off if you have a $29 or more order. These things are great. Order today. Valentine's is next week. Lock it in. Bros, lock it in, baby. Go to berries.com, code HERD. BERRIES. BERRIES. Berries.com. Enter HERD at checkout. Sherry's Berries. First-hand knowledge here. Outstanding.
As a NASCAR fan, it's exciting because you have your biggest race